I'm Sarah from Real Fitness Coaching, and I'm continuing this series on habits. So let's just have a little reminder. This is the book. It's probably that might be backwards, but Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg. And this is the 5th video I've done. I have mentioned along the way the formula that he uses, and his model is B equals MAP. So I want to break it down for you, and I wanted to talk about some of those details and kind of get into that nitty gritty, and then in some other videos we'll break apart each of the components of the map. So this is a kind of a cool graph, and now that I'm showing this, I'm realizing that I think this is all backwards, but B equals MAP. So we've got the behavior. So say you have a habit that you want to create. We're going to call that the behavior. Let's just use an example of I want to foam roll more. So that's the behavior you're looking to do. Then let's look at the MAP. So M stands for motivation, and I've mentioned this in some other videos about how motivation can be like a shapeshifter. It can, also I've called it the motivation monkey, which he calls it in his book. So it can be all over the place. It's not something you can count on. And I liked an example he gave in the book about motivation. And he said, motivation is like a friend at a party, like someone who's a little bit crazy, and like have a great time with them, but are they the person that you're gonna call for a ride to the airport first thing in the morning? Like, can you count on them to be there for you? So I want to plug that again about motivation, because I think sometimes I feel this way, and I hear my clients say this frequently of like, I just need to be more disciplined, or I just need to be more motivated. And I don't think that's helpful, just to be direct. I think we want to come at it from another angle, right? So let's just not say, I just need more motivation. Not really. Okay, and that's actually what Tiny Habits is all about. So one of the things that he describes in this graph, which again, terrible because it's probably backwards, but the more motivation you have, okay, so the higher your motivation is, and this is the behavior line. So this is where you're actually hitting the behavior. So the more motivation you have, the harder of a task you can do, right? So if something's super easy to do, like super tiny, you really don't need much motivation to do that, right? And that's where Tiny Habits comes in. So let's just let that sink in. If something's really hard to do, you are going to need to be really motivated to do that. And I have mentioned this in another video, so I'm not going to keep going into that. But let's just keep those things in mind. Keeping things really easy to do, you don't need a lot of motivation. Okay, so that's the motivation. The ability is what I'm talking about in there, which is the ease of how hard or easy it is to do something. So we'll get into the ability in a little more detail too. We'll kind of flesh that out a bit more, but that's not the purpose of today's video. Today's video, we're just kind of going over the structural components of your behavior equals motivation plus the ability to do something plus a prompt. Okay, so your prompt, he incorporates all of these 3 things into this graph. You can look this up online. You can get the book if you want to study it. I don't think we need to. I think we just need to understand that all of those 3 components need to be present at the same time for your habit, the behavior, to occur. Okay. So B equals MAP. Behavior equals motivation plus ability plus prompt. Let's talk about some examples. All right. I have written some down here so I don't forget. Okay. Let's talk about some examples where you're missing one of the MA or the P's. So this one is missing motivation. Okay, so imagine a client who just loves foam rolling, and particularly their hips and glutes. Like, it feels so good to them. They really enjoy it, and they wish they were doing it more often, right? So, like, that's the goal, that's the behavior that they want to have in place. So we talked about, okay, let's make this a really tiny habit of let's just roll the glutes for like 2 to 3 minutes. Let's make that really small. And so we made that easy to do. It was something that the client likes doing. And then we made a prompt. So we put the prompt of the leaving the foam roller in the living room where this person would pass by it all the time. Okay, so the prompt is there. The goal is small and tiny, right? That was well designed and created. However, here's what happened. When the client was sore from hiking or working out or whatever, they had the motivation to use the roller. Okay? But when they weren't sore, there was no motivation to do it. So they didn't do it. So that's an example of when the motivation is changing. It's shape-shifting. It's here, it's gone. It's here, it's gone, right? So we don't need to like necessarily diagnose this whole thing or like figure it out. But one of the things that I thought could be helpful in that case was to sort of like get into a little more detail about the motivation and also the benefits of foam rolling, right? So foam rolling is great when you're sore, like it feels nice, but foam rolling is also really great when you're not sore. And that helps with blood flow, so that's circulation, bringing in fresh blood, taking out lymph fluids, just giving kind of this massage over the area, warming up the tissues. And there's benefits to doing that regularly. And one of the big benefits to doing foam rolling regularly is that it can really help with just general overall stiffness. And so I thought that education could be a helpful component in there to maybe sort of shore up some of that motivation to do it even when the client wasn't sore. Okay, so that's one example. Let's talk about next example when something is missing. Okay, this is the example of when you're missing a prompt. So this client wanted to work on their shoulder stability more, and particularly wanted to do it outside of our training sessions. And so they came up with an idea that they could maybe try this in the evening when they're kind of in their like sort of living room, like family room, and like gonna watch some TV. And the exercise was doing arm bar with a dumbbell, and so that's a shoulder stability exercise hold position with a dumbbell. And so that was the goal. The prompt was, we had the prompt set up that it was just like, oh, pick up the dumbbell that's sort of adjacent to this room, right? And so when I checked in about how was it going, the client said, well, I didn't do it. It was over there. It was in the other part of the room, and I didn't like remember and think to do it, right? So I said, cool, let's work on the prompt. Let's see like what could be another way to prompt that. Because the motivation was there for increasing shoulder stability and strength. The ability was good. Like, it was an exercise that didn't feel too difficult to that particular person, and it was during an enjoyable time watching TV. So the client came up with a fabulous idea. What they did was they tucked the remote underneath the dumbbell and had the dumbbell in the same room. So now the dumbbell gets left in that TV room. So if they need it during a workout, they go to get it, but it's there. So to literally turn the TV on, you have to reach under the dumbbell to get it. And so there's the dumbbell ready to grab and do the exercise. So that's a tweaking of a prompt. Maybe you have a prompt that works sometimes, but it doesn't work every time. So it's good to kind of like check in on those things and see, could I upgrade my prompt? Could I tweak it a little bit and make that even more effective? Okay, you may be tired of hearing me talk about my bike rides, but I'm going to use this as an example. because in the beginning, when I worked on this, setting this goal for doing a bike ride on my days off, which is typically midweek and then one time on the weekend, I had it in my mind that I wanted it to be a 30-minute bike ride. During the week, I get cardiovascular training in my workouts. I have 2 days a week that's specifically geared towards cardio, but I still get smaller, shorter amounts on the other days that I do strength training. And then I'm doing walking on the weekends when I'm gardening and working in the food forest and such. But I wanted to have some more cardiovascular time, and I particularly wanted to have it outside. So that was the bike ride goal, which you've heard about if you've seen my other videos. So hang with me for just a couple more minutes while I talk a little bit more about this habit. Making that goal be 30 minutes was making the ability too hard. I was motivated to do it for cardiovascular health. I also was motivated to do it because I wanted to spend time outside being active. And to be honest, my prompt is not... I don't really have a great prompt for this activity. I use my calendar. It's in my calendar. Depending on the time of year, the bike ride either happens before the shower at the end of the day, so it's in the afternoon. But as it's starting to get a little bit hotter, which is right now, I shift the bike ride to before lunch. So those are kind of my anchors, and that's not a great prompt. So this is not a perfect example of prompts, but for me, I use it in my calendar. I know it's happening on Wednesday. I know it's happening usually Sunday. Sometimes it switches, but it's in the calendar. It repeats, and sometimes I shift it from morning to afternoon, depending on the time of the year. Okay, but the ability was starting to get too hard. And so what I noticed was that if I had just been sick, if I had just been on a trip, if blah, 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 right? Whatever it was, I wasn't doing it. And so I shifted it to 5 minutes. So the goal is 5 minutes. 5 minutes on the bike. Go get on the bike, literally ride down the street, a very short street. We live here and back. Okay, 5 minutes, that's the goal. And I share this with you because I think sometimes we set the goals too big. Even I can do that. And I'm here to tell you that I absolutely know with 100% certainty that I ride my bike way more often because I've set the goal so small. And I don't feel resistance to doing it. I know that it's a win for me if I get on that bike for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Now, to be fair, I usually do 30 minutes because I'm enjoying it and I like it and it's great being outside. But that's not the goal. And so I just want to remind you that if you're finding that you're not doing this habit that you're trying to create, maybe you're saying you want to do a whole strength workout on your own, or maybe you want to do whatever it is, how can we break it down and make it smaller and work towards that eventual goal? Okay, so thanks for hanging in there with the bike ride story one more time. Okay, and I want to give a last example, and this is where all the things line up pretty well. So the behavior, this is another example from myself. The behavior for me is doing 5 kettlebell swings. The motivation is that I have low bone density, I have osteoporosis in my family, and I am at the age where my estrogen levels have been declining and are going to continue to decline. And so it's very important to me. I am very motivated to keep strong bones. And I didn't want to add another strength training day into my week. I have 2. Putting the third in is a future goal. It's just right now, that's just not something I want to do. But I do want to do more strength training. And so I heard on a podcast, he's a physical therapist, Kelly, talk about leaving your kettlebell in the kitchen. And I thought that was a really clever idea. And so I've made the goal small. It's 5 swings. It's a moderate weight. It's not super heavy. It's not super light. So that ability is pretty easy. And then the prompt is that I leave the kettlebell in between the kitchen island and the couch. There's this nice long area, and it's just right there on the floor. And so the goal is anytime I'm walking through the house and I see it, I'm going to do 5 kettlebell swings. And I can't say that I do it every day, but I do it more days than I don't. Oftentimes I do it after a meal. I've come back in and I feel like, I've come back in from outside because we're often eating outside. So I've come back in and I see the kettlebell, right? Because it's adjacent to the kitchen. And I'm like, oh, let's do 5 swings. And I think about, my hip strength and bone density, and yeah, like that all works. So the behavior is happening. I have the motivation to increase bone strength. I've kept the ability of it really easy, 5 swings at a middle weight, not super heavy. And the prompt is I leave the kettlebell out in the living room. So that is the talk for today. I always mean to keep these short, and they always seem to be going over 15 minutes. I try so hard. But I wanted to really just brush up on the formula for behavior and habits. So keeping motivation, ability, and prompts all working together to make your habits happening. So leave me some comments if you have questions or examples of your own. I would love to hear them, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks for watching.